This Ask Misty is from Michael. Dear Misty, drag queens have historically been great leaders in the LGBT community. Retired queens have also led as well. Do you think that you need to actively paint to be a true queen and leader? Or do you think once a queen, always a queen? Thanks, doll. Thanks, doll. Looking forward to your thoughts, Michael. Ugh, this question is so, like, vague. Do you like the color blue? Yes. My answer to your question is yes. But let's break it down a little bit. Drag queens have always, throughout history, drag queens have led as pillars in the LGBT community. Of course, absolutely. In the leather community, in the regular community, in the bear community, thanks to Stonewall, you know, the riots happen with drag queens leading that forefront. Absolutely. Retired queens, I think, are always going to be that person. Living in the public, for example, I think retired queens are also going to be, I think retired queens are always going to have a piece of that in them. For example, I was recently talking with someone, I think 2 days ago, 3 days ago, I said oral. For example, recently I was having a discussion with a friend, and we were just randomly talking about things, and I was talking about, I think it was relationships or whatever, and I was mentioning to him that I was in a sexless relationship and with an abusive emotion. I was talking to him about the fact that I've dated seriously in a sexless relationship with an emotionally abusive bipolar individual, and I never cheated on him. But it was a sexless relationship. And he was like, why? And I'm like, to be honest, I wanted it to work. To be honest, I hold myself at a higher standard. Because living in the public eye, I feel that I have a moral obligation to my community. And the last thing I wanted to do was go to the bathhouse or somewhere easy where I could be like, no names, just sex. And that's not really cheating in that there's no emotional, like, oh, we're in love, you know, it's just you stick your dick through a wall or whatever. And you're still getting those needs met, but not on an emotional, anyways, it's complicated. But I never did that. Thought of it, but I didn't do that because primarily I didn't want someone to see me and know that I have a boyfriend. I was very public about my boyfriend. But I was so afraid that somebody would see me and know that I had a boyfriend and know that I was cheating on him. So I never did. And I remember the one time when I first moved to Fort Lauderdale, again, little Christian girl, too gay to be Christian, too Christian to be gay. I was a big member of the Sunshine Cathedral, which is a MCC church, because I was desperate to get involved with a gay church. This is many years ago. And I remember there was two guys, and they were white, and they had been together forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. You know, I don't know how long, 20 years, whatever. And they adopted a boy. And I say they were white because the boy wasn't white. But they adopted a boy. And oftentimes they would stand up in church and be like, you know, there were always like praise reports, and, or I don't remember, I just remember not knowing them, but seeing them, like, oh yeah, that's the married couple, role models for our community. Thinking, I remember seeing them in church. My point is, I remember seeing them in church thinking, oh, I want to be like them one day. They're good role models for our community, and they're, you know, in love, and they're together, and they've adopted a kid, and I just want to be like that. Well, lo and behold, maybe a month later, I'm at the bookstore, and who walks in? I was devastated. I was crushed. I was destroyed. And again, I was raised in a really religious family, and I'm not like other people, but I was traumatized, and I left because I felt so guilty seeing a married guy cheat on his boyfriend, and I didn't want to do that to somebody else. So, sorry for the tangent. So my response to you is this. If you were a queen and you had an element of global or community pillarism, I think that will always be a part of you. Not that it's a moral obligation or responsibility, but once you've had the taste of something, whether it's chocolate or sex or stage time or whatever, once you've tasted it, can't really go back. So even as a retired queen or somebody that, what'd you say? For a retired queen or somebody that doesn't actively paint every day, you could still be a leader. I don't know if I would ride the queen title, but anybody could be a leader in our community. You don't have to wear a wig, you don't have to wear makeup, but I do think that part of you will always be there. And that being said, I also know drag queens that tell everyone they're a drag queen. Oh, I'm a drag queen girl, I'm a drag queen, I'm a drag queen girl. And they spend so much time talking about how amazing they are, but once you get into the key, they've only done drag like 4 times in their whole life, and it's on Halloween. But they ride the drag queen, you know. And I know one of them was a very, very good friend of mine, and the only time she ever did drag was for a benefit, like once every 2 years, or maybe twice a year at the very most. And the only time she would do drag is when I did her makeup. But she was this drag queen, and she wanted everyone to think of her as a drag queen. But to me, I was like, you're just a gay boy who wears makeup sometimes for charity. So, but I do know a lot of drag queens that ride the drag queen train, and I wouldn't consider them a drag queen. But that being said, I guess what I'm trying to say is I know a lot of girls that I know a lot of girls that ride the I'm a drag queen train, and they're not really drag queens in my eyes. But absolutely, be a pillar in your community. You don't have to wear makeup at all, let alone every day or often. But I do think that if you are a queen or somebody in a public position, you should have a moral responsibility and obligation to your community. And it's sad because it's not something that's held up in our community. You know, I remember when I first started coming out, I would go to clubs in Miami, and drag queens would be so trashed, they'd fall off the stage onto their face. And I remember thinking, God, I never want to do that, ever. Never let me be that person. Because, yeah, they're famous, and yeah, people are like, you know, but they're also like, oh my God, she's a fucking disaster behind her back. And I don't want that. So, as a recap, do you think you need to actively paint to be a true queen and a leader? Or once always a queen? I think it's more along the lines, once a queen, always a queen. Even if you're wearing chaps and a leather harness at the ramrod. Because I think going through that process, it's not easy. The transformation's not easy, and the elevation of status in your community is not easy, and getting your respect and notoriety is not easy. And once you go through those hurdles, no matter whether you're a bear man or some guy in a school, a principal, for example, it doesn't matter. I think once a queen, always a queen in that aspect. And that you should have that moral responsibility and always be a leader in your community, even if you're not doing it under the guise of being a former queen. But I do think that you should be, yeah, once a queen, always a queen. Loving you is easy.